You put those irons on me, Caleb, and you'll never sleep another night in your life. Sheriff Caleb Doren didn't flinch. The manacles clicked shut around his younger brother's wrists, cold iron biting into skin that had wrestled him in the creek behind their mother's cabin 20 years ago. The sound echoed through the dust-choked street of Red Hollow like a coffin lid falling. "Walk," Caleb said. Ezra Doren smiled. That was the thing that shook Caleb more than the blood on his brother's shirt, more than the body cooling in the back room of the Silver Spur Saloon, more than the whispers already snaking through the crowd. Ezra smiled like a man who knew a secret, like a man watching his brother step onto a bridge that wouldn't hold. The crowd parted. Widow Havers pressed a handkerchief to her mouth. Old man Peel spat tobacco into the dust. The Mexican boy who swept the barber shop stood frozen with his broom, eyes as wide as dinner plates. Nobody spoke. Nobody had to. Everyone had seen Ezra stumble out of the saloon at 10:30, and everyone had seen the dead man on the floor with 3 inches of Doran steel buried under his ribs. Everyone except Caleb, who had been sleeping when the deputy came pounding on his door. The wind kicked up as they walked, dragging red grit across the boardwalks, rattling the loose shutter on the empty tinsmith shop. The sun sat low and mean, bleeding orange through the copper haze. Somewhere a rooster crowed too late. Somewhere a woman was crying, and it wasn't for the dead man. It was Sarah, Ezra's wife. She stood on the porch of their little house at the end of Bell Street, both hands clamped over her mouth, and her eyes met Caleb's for one long, unbearable second. There was something in that look he couldn't name. Not fear, not grief. Something older. Something that felt, absurdly, like an apology. Then she turned and disappeared inside. "Sarah," Ezra called after her, and for the first time his voice cracked. "Sarah, don't." But the door had already closed. Caleb kept walking. His boots ground against the packed dirt. Sweat crawled down his spine under the star pinned to his vest. The star their father had worn. The star Ezra had refused when it was offered to him first. "You want to tell me what happened?" Caleb said quietly, so only Ezra could hear. "I want to tell you a story," Ezra murmured back. "But not yet. Not until you're ready to hear it. A man is dead." "Yes." "With your knife in him." "Yes." "In front of 6 witnesses." Ezra turned his head, just slightly, and the smile came back. Small, sad, almost tender. "Big brother," he said, "some of those witnesses have been lying to you for 2 years. Caleb's boot hitched on nothing. He caught himself, kept walking, kept his face flat as a struck anvil. But something under his ribs went cold and stayed cold. The jailhouse waited at the end of the street, low and squat, its adobe walls the color of old blood in the dying light. Deputy Miles held the door open. Miles wouldn't meet Caleb's eyes either. That was the second thing. The first had been Sarah. Caleb filed it away and kept walking. Inside, the air smelled of coal oil, gun oil, and the sour tang of a jail that had held too many men over too many years. Caleb walked his brother past his own desk, past the pot-bellied stove, past the peg where their father's old Colt still hung in its cracked holster. Down the short hall, into the last cell. He unlocked the manacles. Ezra rubbed his wrists but didn't complain. "Sit down, easy." Ezra sat on the plank bunk. The cell door groaned shut. The key turned with a sound Caleb had heard 1,000 times and never once felt in his teeth like this. "Water's in the pail," Caleb said. "Blanket if the wind picks up. I'll have Miles bring supper." Caleb, he almost kept walking. God, he almost did. "What?" Ezra leaned forward. His eyes, the same gray as their mother's, caught the last light through the high barred window. "When you go to the saloon tomorrow to look at that body," he said, "check the left boot. The lining, not the right. Ezra, just check the boot." Caleb stared at him a long moment. Then he turned and walked out. Miles was waiting by the stove, hat in his hands, twisting the brim like he was wringing water from it. "Sheriff, there's something you should know." "Not tonight." "Sheriff, not tonight, Miles." Caleb walked out into the street. The sun was gone. The sky above Red Hollow had gone the color of a fresh bruise, purple bleeding into black, and the first coyote was already crying out beyond the west ridge. Caleb stood there a moment, letting the wind push dust against his teeth. "Some of those witnesses have been lying to you for 2 years." He didn't go home. He walked, instead, to the Silver Spur. The doors were shut, a hand-lettered sign nailed to the frame, "Closed by order of the sheriff." His own handwriting. Caleb produced the key, turned the lock, and stepped inside. The body was still there, laid out on the poker table, a stained sheet over it. The saloon was empty. The lamps had guttered low. The air smelled of spilled whiskey and something sweeter, coppery, that Caleb had smelled too many times in 15 years wearing the star. He crossed to the table. He lifted the sheet. The dead man was called Warren Cade, a cattle buyer out of Prescott, in town 3 days, well-liked, generous with his coin. Big man, gray at the temples. A face Caleb had shaken hands with just yesterday afternoon. Caleb's eyes traveled down. Boots. He knelt. He lifted the left boot. He worked his fingers into the lining, felt paper, drew it out. It was a photograph. Cracked, faded, folded in quarters. Caleb unfolded it under the guttering lamplight, and the breath went out of him like he'd been kicked by a horse. The photograph was of a woman and a little girl. The woman was Sarah. The little girl had Ezra's eyes. And on the back, in a hand Caleb had known since he could read, 3 words in pencil. Find her. Ezra. Caleb didn't sleep. He sat at his desk with the photograph on the blotter and a bottle of rye untouched at his elbow, and he watched the coal oil lamp burn down to a blue trembling flicker while the town outside slept the sleep of the righteous and the ignorant. He turned the photograph over, turned it back. Sarah, maybe 5 years younger, thinner, her hair longer and darker, standing in a doorway he didn't recognize. The little girl on her hip couldn't have been more than 2. Fine black hair, gray eyes, a hand curled in her mother's collar like she was holding on for her life. Find her. Caleb had known Sarah for 6 years. He had stood as best man when she married Ezra 4 autumns ago. He had eaten her cornbread. He had watched her nurse Ezra through the fever the winter of 78. He had, God forgive him, once looked at her across a supper table and looked away fast because his brother had married her, and that was that. He had never known she had a daughter. The lamp guttered. Caleb rubbed his eyes with the heels of his hands. Outside, the first pale bruise of dawn was showing over the roof of the livery. He got up. He put the photograph in the inside pocket of his vest, close against his ribs where the star pinned through. He put on his hat. He walked out into the cold gray morning. Sarah opened the door before he knocked. She had not slept either. Her hair was down. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but dry, and she looked at Caleb the way a woman looks at a doctor when she's already decided the news is going to be bad. Come in, Caleb. The kitchen smelled of yesterday's coffee. She poured him a cup without asking. Her hand did not tremble. That was another thing that would stay with him. He set the photograph on the table between them. Sarah looked at it. She sat down. She folded her hands in her lap like a schoolgirl at prayer. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Her name is Rose, Sarah said finally. She'll be 7 this fall. Yours. Mine. Ezra's. A pause. No. Caleb sat down slowly across from her. The chair creaked under him. The wind pushed at the loose window sash, and the sound was like a small animal trying to get in. Whose, Sarah? She looked up, and in her face Caleb saw something he had not seen in 6 years of knowing her. The tired, honest, bone-deep look of a woman who has finally set down a weight she has been carrying alone. Warren Cade's, she said. Caleb closed his eyes. He didn't know, Sarah said quickly. He never knew. I was 17. He was a buyer coming through Prescott, and he was kind to me. And then he was gone, and by the time I knew what I was carrying, he was somewhere in Kansas selling steers to somebody else. I didn't tell him. I didn't want him. I wanted my daughter. How did Ezra find out? He didn't find out. I told him. Before I married him. I told him everything. Caleb, everything. Because I wasn't going to start a marriage on a lie. And he said, her voice broke, just once, and she gathered it back. He said Rose was his daughter now, and he'd find her, because I hadn't been able to keep her. Where is she? Sarah looked at her hands. The Sisters of Mercy in Santa Fe took her when she was 4 months old. I couldn't feed her. I couldn't, she stopped. Started again. 2 years ago, the sisters wrote that a family had come and taken her. They wouldn't say who. They wouldn't say where. Ezra has been looking ever since. And Cade. Ezra found him last month. In Prescott. He was a rich man, Caleb. He'd made his money. And Ezra went to him and told him he had a daughter. Asked him to help find her. Cade, she swallowed. Cade laughed. He said he wasn't paying blackmail. He said if Ezra came near him again, he'd have him shot as a horse thief. He said no bastard whore's brat was going to touch his name. The word whore fell into the kitchen like a stone into a well. Caleb sat very still. So Ezra came here. Ezra came here. And Kate followed him. To finish it. And last night in the saloon? Sarah's eyes were wet now, but her voice was iron. Cade was drunk. He said things. In front of witnesses he had already paid. He said them loud enough for Ezra to hear. About me. About Rose. Ezra. She pressed her fist against her mouth. Ezra did what any man would do. He killed him. He answered him. Caleb stood up. He walked to the window. The dawn was pinker now, the color of the inside of a shell. The town was starting to stir. A wagon creaked down Bell Street. A dog barked twice and stopped. He thought about the star on his vest. He thought about 6 witnesses. He thought about Judge Halloran, who would ride in from Prescott on Thursday, and who was known across 3 counties as a hanging judge who took no interest in circumstances. He thought about Ezra smiling at him in the street. Some of those witnesses have been lying to you for 2 years. Cade's money. Cade's men. Cade's story, planted in the saloon before the killing ever happened. Sarah, he said, without turning. How many witnesses were in that saloon? 6. How many of them work for the barquet spread out of Prescott? A pause. 4. Caleb closed his eyes. His brother had walked into a room already loaded against him and put a knife in a man who had it coming. And the law Caleb wore on his chest, the law he had bled for and buried men for and given his whole grown life to. The law was going to hang him. Unless Caleb broke it. He stood there a long time. The sun came up over Red Hollow. A rider was coming down the north road, fast, dust rising behind him like a signal fire. Caleb watched him come. He recognized the horse before he recognized the man. It was Judge Halloran's clerk. 3 days early. They weren't waiting for Thursday. The clerk's name was Poole, and he rode into Red Hollow with a satchel of writs and a mouth full of Prescott gossip. Caleb met him at the livery. Poole was a small, dust-caked man with ink-stained fingers and eyes that missed nothing, and he swung down from his lathered horse with the crisp efficiency of a man who has ridden all night and intends to be paid for it. Sheriff Doren. Judge sends his compliments. He pulled a folded paper from the satchel. Warrant of indictment. Circuit's been moved. Judge Halloran will be here tomorrow at noon. Trial to commence day after. He wants the prisoner examined at once. Tomorrow. At noon. Yes. That's 2 days early. Poole's eyes flicked up. Judge received a wire from Mr. Osborne of the Barquet Spread. Personal friend of the judge. Requested the docket be advanced. Judge saw fit to oblige. Caleb took the paper. He did not read it. He folded it twice and tucked it into his coat. Where can I get breakfast? Poole asked. Widow Haver's boarding house. Tell her I sent you. Poole nodded and went. Caleb stood in the livery doorway a long moment, watching the little man walk away, and felt the noose tighten one more notch around his brother's neck. 2 days. He walked back to the jailhouse. Miles was at the stove, boiling coffee. Miles was 31 years old, married, 2 children, and Caleb had trusted him with his life more than once. But Caleb had seen the way Miles wouldn't meet his eyes last night, and now, this morning, he saw it again. Miles. Sheriff. Look at me. Miles looked. His face was gray. His mouth worked twice before words came. They came to me 2 weeks ago, he said. 2 of Osborne's men. Said if trouble ever started between Cade and Ezra Doren, I was to make sure certain things got into my report. Names of witnesses. Time of the fight. Said there'd be $100 in it for my boy's schooling. You took the money. I took the money. Miles's voice was steady, but his eyes were wet. I didn't know they were going to kill a man, Caleb. I swear to God. I thought it was a land dispute. I thought, he stopped. I'll ride out today. You won't see me again. You'll ride out when I say you ride out. Right now you're going to sit at that desk, and you're going to write down every name they gave you. Every one. And then you're going to sign it. Miles wiped his face with the back of his hand. Yes, sir. And Miles. Sheriff. When this is done, you're going to give that $100 back. Yes, sir. Caleb went back to the cell. Ezra was sitting exactly where he'd left him, hands loose between his knees, and he looked up as Caleb approached the bars. You found the boot. I found the boot. Then you know. I know some of it. Ezra's face didn't change, but something in his eyes did. A softening. The smile he'd worn yesterday had been armor. Now the armor was gone, and underneath was just a man who had loved a woman and looked for a child and killed to protect them both. Big brother, Ezra said quietly. I need to ask you something I have no right to ask. Don't ask it. Halloran's coming. I know. He'll hang me. I know. Ezra stood. He came to the bars. His hands wrapped around the iron, and Caleb saw for the first time how much thinner his brother had become in the last year, how the wedding ring hung loose on his finger. Find Rose, Ezra said. That's all I ask. Not for me. For Sarah. Cade's men will go looking now, because Cade told them before he died. He told them there was a bastard child that might come sniffing at his estate. They'll find her before Sarah does. And his voice went to gravel. You know what they'll do. Caleb looked at his brother through the bars for a long moment. I put you in here easy. You did your job. I put you in here. Caleb. Ezra's eyes held his. Get me out. Or find her. Choose. Somewhere in the town, a bell began to ring. Caleb turned. Miles was already on his feet, moving toward the window. The bell was the church bell, but it wasn't ringing for service. 3 quick strikes, a pause, 3 quick strikes. The old alarm. Riders coming. Caleb was at the door in 3 strides. They came down the north road in a hard column, 7 of them, dust boiling behind them. And Caleb knew before he could count the horses that these were Barkay men. Rough hands, hard faces, rifles across their pommels. They were not stopping at the livery. They were not stopping at the boarding house. They were riding straight for the jailhouse. At their head rode a lean man in a black duster with a silver band on his hat. Osborne, Cade's foreman, or partner, or something worse. Caleb had never met him. He didn't need to. Osborne reined up in the street. The dust caught up with the horses and drifted past. The 7 men fanned out in a loose half-circle, and every rifle came down casually across a thigh, muzzles not quite pointing at Caleb, not quite pointing away. Sheriff Doren. Mr. Osborne. You have a prisoner. I have. We've come to escort him to Prescott. Judge feels the trial should be held there. Neutral ground. Caleb didn't smile. Judge is coming here. Judge changed his mind. Judge didn't tell his clerk. Osborne's face did not move. Sheriff, let's not make this ugly. Caleb stepped down off the porch. His hand did not go to his gun. It didn't need to. Every man in that yard knew where his hand was and where it could be in half a heartbeat. Mr. Osborne, my brother is in my custody. He'll be tried in my town by the judge who was assigned. You want to take him from me, you'll have to shoot me first. And if you shoot a sheriff in front of 30 witnesses on a Tuesday morning, you won't ride out of Red Hollow. Not one of you. Behind him, Caleb heard the click of a lever action. Miles. Good man. Behind Miles, another. And another. Old man Peel on the barbershop porch. The blacksmith at the forge door, hammer set down, rifle up. The Mexican boy's father in the loft of the livery. Osborne's eyes moved. Counted. Recalculated. This isn't over, Sheriff. No, sir. It isn't. Osborne wheeled his horse. The 7 men wheeled with him. They rode out slower than they'd come in, and the dust hung a long time in the street after them. Caleb stood in the sunlight until his heart slowed. Then he went back inside. Ezra was at the bars again. They'll come back tonight, Ezra said. I know. With more men. I know. You have to choose, Caleb. Caleb looked at his brother. He thought about the star on his chest. He thought about Sarah's dry, honest eyes. He thought about a little girl named Rose with gray eyes in a place he didn't know. I already chose, he said. He did it at moonrise. Sarah was waiting in the kitchen with a bundle, bread, jerked beef, a canteen filled, a wool blanket rolled tight. 2 saddled horses stood in the alley behind the house, and one of them was Caleb's own bay mare, and the other was a rough little Mustang he had bought that afternoon from the livery in cash, so there'd be no paper trail. He had also, quietly, sent a wire to a U.S. Marshal in Santa Fe whom his father had once ridden with. The wire had said only, Barkay, Osborne. Cade dead. Corruption. Come. If the Marshal came, he came. If he didn't, Caleb would be a fugitive by sunrise. He walked back to the jailhouse alone. Miles was gone. Caleb had sent him home to his wife with a signed deposition sealed in an envelope addressed to the Santa Fe Marshal, to be posted at dawn no matter what. The stove was cold. The lamp burned low. Caleb walked to the cell and unlocked the door. Ezra stood. You sure? No. Caleb. Don't. Just come. They rode out the back way, through the cottonwoods along the creek, keeping to the soft ground where hooves left no sound. Sarah rode between them. She had not wept when Caleb told her. She had only looked at him with those tired, honest eyes and said, Thank you. and gone to pack the bundle. They rode for an hour before Caleb pulled up in a stand of pinyon on the ridge above the town. Red Hollow spread below them, small and lamplit and unaware. The church bell rang once, faintly, marking the half hour. Somewhere down there Osborne was gathering his men. Santa Fe, Caleb said. The Sisters of Mercy. Sarah, you tell them the truth. Everything. Tell them a marshal will come. Tell them Warren Cade is dead and that his estate is going to have a lot of vultures picking at it. And if there's a little girl anywhere with his blood in her, she needs finding fast. You understand me? Yes. Ezra, you don't stop. You don't come back. Not for me. Not for the town. Not for anything. You find Rose. You keep Sarah safe. You disappear. Ezra's jaw worked. Caleb, what about you? I'll answer for what I did. They'll take your star. I know. They might take more than that. Caleb looked at his brother in the moonlight. The years had been hard on both of them, but he could still see, under the beard and the lines and the bruised cheekbone, the 8-year-old boy who had followed him down to the creek every morning of one long-lost summer. Easy, he said. You remember what Ma used to say? Ezra almost smiled. About which of us she loved more? About Mercy. Yeah. Mercy isn't weakness, their mother had said, and she had said it holding a straight razor to the throat of the drunk who had beaten her, and she had said it lowering the razor and walking away. Mercy is the hardest thing a person can do, because you have to be strong enough not to. Ezra reached into his coat. He drew out something small. He held it out. It was a bracelet. Braided horsehair, dark and pale, strands woven together. The kind a child might make. The kind a father might carry for 6 years while he looked. I had this made, Ezra said, from the mane of the horse Sarah rode when I first met her, and a piece of my own hair. For Rose. When I find her. He paused. When you find her. Caleb took the bracelet. It weighed almost nothing. It weighed everything. You said when I find her. I said what I said. Ezra. Big brother. Ezra's eyes were wet now, and he was not trying to hide it. I'm not going to make it to Santa Fe. Don't talk like that. Osborne's men are on the South Road, and the East Road, and probably the North by now. There's one road they won't be watching, because it goes nowhere but broken country and Apache land. Sarah can make it through that country on a fast horse with a light load. 2 riders won't. 3 riders can't. Caleb stared at him. No. They want me, Caleb. They only want me. Because I'm the one who put a knife in Cade, and I'm the one who could tell a courtroom every dirty thing Osborne ever did for that man. If they catch me, they stop looking. Sarah rides through. You ride back to Red Hollow and be sheriff again. And you find my girl. Ezra, I won't. You will. Ezra's voice was iron. Because you're the one wearing the star. And because Rose doesn't need a dead man for a father. She needs an uncle who's alive. Sarah made a small, cracked sound and pressed her face into her horse's mane. The moon slid behind a cloud. Caleb looked at the bracelet in his palm. He looked at his brother. He thought of every mile of the last 38 years, every fight and every stupid pride and every silence where love should have gone, and he could not, would not, say what he had to say. Ezra said it for him. It's all right, Caleb. It's all right. Give me a horse and give me till morning. Caleb reached across the saddle. His hand closed on his brother's neck, and Ezra's closed on his. And for a long moment, the 2 Doren brothers held each other in the moonlight the way they hadn't since they were boys. I love you, Easy. I know it. Always did. Caleb pressed the bracelet back into his brother's hand. You give it to her yourself. Caleb, you lead them a chase, Ezra. You lead them all the way to hell if you have to. But you live. You hear me? You live and you meet me and Sarah in Santa Fe in 30 days, and we find her together. Ezra looked at him, and slowly, the old smile came back. Not the armored one from the street. The real one. The 8-year-old at the creek. 30 days, he said. 30 days. They separated at the crossroads under the piñons. Sarah rode east into the broken country, low on her horse, the bundle strapped tight. Ezra rode south, straight into the teeth of Osborne's men, the bracelet in his breast pocket and a rifle across his knees. Caleb sat his mare on the ridge and watched them both go until the dust of each had disappeared into the dark. Then he turned his horse back toward Red Hollow. He still had a star to wear. For now, they brought Ezra's body in 3 days later. He had led them 90 miles. He had crossed 2 rivers, doubled back once through a box canyon, and killed 2 of Osborne's men before the third put a rifle ball through his lung on the flats below Coyote Mesa. He had lived 4 hours after that, propped against a rock, before Osborne himself rode up. What passed between them nobody would ever know for certain, but when the Barkay men rode into Red Hollow at noon on the 3rd day with Ezra's body across a saddle, Osborne was not with them. He was tied face down over his own horse, alive but wristbound, with a U.S. Marshal's badge holding the reins. Marshal Elias Byrne had ridden in from Santa Fe on the morning of the 2nd day with 4 deputies, a stack of federal warrants, and the letter Miles had posted. He had found Osborne 2 hours ahead of him on the South Trail, standing over Ezra Doran's body, and he had put Osborne in irons on the spot. The rest of the Barkay men, faced with federal law and their own foreman in chains, had surrendered without a shot. Byrne rode into Red Hollow with the prisoner and the body and dismounted stiffly in front of the jailhouse. He was a thin, gray man of maybe 60 with a face like weathered oak, and he had known the Doren brothers' father back before the war. "Sheriff, Marshal, I got your wire. Thank you. I'm sorry it wasn't sooner." Caleb looked at his brother across the saddle. The dust had settled on Ezra's shirt. His hands were folded. Someone, maybe Osborne, maybe one of the men, maybe Ezra himself in his last hour, had placed the horsehair bracelet in his fingers. Caleb took it. He put it in his vest pocket, close against the star. "Marshal," he said, "there's a woman in the East Country, riding to Santa Fe. She'll be at the Sisters of Mercy inside a week if she made the crossing. I need her told. I need her told gentle. I'll ride myself." "Thank you, Sheriff." Byrne's voice dropped. "You broke your brother out of that cell." "Yes, sir. I did." "You want to tell me why?" Caleb told him. All of it. The photograph. The witnesses. Miles's deposition. Kate. Rose. The choice at the crossroads. He did not spare himself. When he was finished, Byrne looked at him a long time. "You'll have to answer for it." "I know. There'll be a hearing. In Santa Fe. Could go hard." "I know." Byrne nodded once, slow. "I'll speak for you. Your father was the best man I ever rode with. And I've listened to Osborne talk for an hour on the trail, and I've read your deputy's statement, and I'll be damned if I let a Doren hang for cleaning up Warren Cade's mess." He paused. "Bring your brother home first. Bury him proper. Then ride to Santa Fe. I'll be waiting." They buried Ezra on the hill above the creek where he and Caleb had wrestled as boys. The whole town came. Widow Havers wept. Old man Peel, who had said nothing in 50 years about anything, said a few halting words about the Doren boy's mother. Miles stood in the back with his hat in his hand and his eyes on the ground. The blacksmith laid a hammered iron cross at the head of the grave. Sarah wasn't there. Sarah was in Santa Fe. Caleb rode out the next morning. He found them in a small adobe house behind the Sisters of Mercy on a street where children played in the dust and old women sold peppers strung on braided cords. Marshal Byrne met him at the gate. "She's inside," Byrne said. "Sarah told her this morning." "Told her what?" "About her father. About her mother. About her uncle." Caleb took off his hat. The little girl was sitting on the packed earth floor of the courtyard, playing with a wooden horse the sisters had given her. She was 7 years old. Her hair was fine and black. Her eyes were the gray of a winter creek. She looked up when the shadow fell over her. Sarah stood in the doorway behind. She had not slept. Her face had aged 5 years and 5 days. But she was upright, and her hands were steady, and when she saw Caleb, she nodded once. The way people nod when there are no words left to spend. Caleb knelt down in the dust. "Rose." The little girl looked at him with grave, patient eyes. "My name is Caleb," he said. "I'm your uncle. Mama told me." "Did she?" "She said you're the one who was going to bring my papa." Caleb closed his eyes. When he opened them, he took the bracelet from his vest pocket. Braided horsehair, dark and pale strands woven together. A piece of Sarah's first horse, a piece of Ezra's hair. "Your papa made this for you," he said. "A long time ago. He carried it with him every day so that when he found you, he'd have something to give. He wanted you to know." His voice broke, and he did not fight it. He let it break. He was tired of not letting things break. He wanted you to know that he was looking. All the time. Every day. He was looking for you. Rose reached out. Her small fingers took the bracelet. She studied it a long moment, the way a child studies something serious. "Is he coming?" "No, honey." "Why not?" Caleb thought about how to say it. He thought about all the ways a man could lie to a child and call it kindness. He thought about his mother with the razor lowered, walking away. Because he loved you very much, he said, and some men didn't want him to find you. And when he stood between them and you, they hurt him too badly for him to come. But he sent me, and he sent your mother, and we're both here, and we'll be here every day of your life if you'll have us. Rose looked at the bracelet. She slid it onto her wrist. It was too big. It hung loose on her small arm, dark and pale strands catching the New Mexico sun. Then you're my papa now, she said. Caleb couldn't speak. He simply nodded. And when Rose walked into his arms, he held her the way he had held nothing in his life. And Sarah came out of the doorway and stood behind him with her hand on his shoulder, and the marshal turned away to give them the yard. The hearing in Santa Fe took 2 days. Marshal Burns spoke. Miles's deposition was read aloud. Osborne, facing federal murder and corruption charges of his own, made a full accounting in exchange for spared rope. Judge Halloran, when he understood what had been done in his name, resigned from the bench within the month. Caleb was censured. His star was taken. He did not contest it. He came back to Red Hollow long enough to pack a saddlebag and shake Miles's hand and lay a stone at his brother's grave. Then he rode south to Santa Fe, to a small adobe house behind the Sisters of Mercy, where a woman with tired, honest eyes and a little girl with a horsehair bracelet were waiting for him at the gate. Years later, Rose Doren would tell her own children about the uncle who became her father. She would tell them about a man in a saloon who called her mother a name, and about a knife that answered him, and about 2 brothers on a ridge under a moon who chose each other the only way brothers can. She would tell them her real father's name was Ezra, and that he had carried a bracelet for 6 years looking for her, and that on the day her uncle placed it in her hand she understood, even at 7, that some men love you before they ever meet you. The bracelet hung in a shadow box above her hearth all her life. And on the ridge above Red Hollow, above the creek where 2 boys had once wrestled in a lost summer, 2 names were carved into the trunk of the oldest cottonwood, side by side, worn smooth by 80 years of wind. Ezra, Caleb. The wind moves through the leaves there still.